Welcome back to the newest interview in the Homeschool Chats series. I guess we're just calling it General Classical Homeschool Chats. It's a very unofficial thing. And so today I have Whitney Newby from Brighter Day Press, and I'm so excited to talk to her. So today we're going to be talking about, first of all, learning more about Brighter Day Press, what they offer, how they might be able to serve your family, and how it all began. And then we're going to dive into talking a little bit about what it is like to be a work at home homeschooling mom. Like the questions, I'm sure Whitney gets them as often as I do. How do you balance it all? So we're going to dive right in. Welcome, Whitney. I'm so thankful that you could take a few minutes to chat with us and share your wisdom and tell us about your shop.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to get to talk to you in person. We've chatted a lot online, but I'll also get to meet you very soon at the Teach Them Diligently conference in Pigeon Forge. So I'm excited about that as well.
I am too. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm Whitney Newby. I am a mom of 4, and they are currently 10, 8, 5, and 3. And I'm a pastor's wife, and we live in Fort Worth, Texas. And our business ministry is called Brighter Day Press, where we create gospel-centered, literature-rich resources for family discipleship, really. So not only for homeschool families, but anyone who is wanting to disciple their kids and needs the tools to do it. So we have some morning time resources. We also have a lot of unit studies for various holidays. And those are some of my favorite things, just viewing holidays that may feel like Hallmark holidays in a way, but through a biblical worldview. And so I love choosing books that go with those. My husband and I both write the devotions that go with those. We actually met in Bible school, so we're able to use some of that. And it has just been a joy to do, it's like a hobby that got out of control. It's like what I absolutely love doing. I've actually just started doing some watercolor classes because I used to teach painting classes. And so anyway, it's really just spilling over what we're doing in our homeschool and sharing it with other families, which has been so much fun.
Awesome. How did you get started with homeschooling? Did you always plan to homeschool, or did it just kind of happen to you?
So like a lot of people, I was one that said I was never going to homeschool. I thought homeschoolers were weird and unsocialized, and it was not for me. And in fact, I was working almost full time as a registered nurse when it was time for my oldest to go to kindergarten. And so we looked at some schools in our area and visited, and our oldest, who's now 10, when he was 5.5, he was already reading. He was a voracious reader. And a few of the schools were like, he may not be the best fit. He was also very, very active. And so I just figured, you know what, we're going to try kindergarten. And we'll definitely put him in school for 1st grade, but how much, I can't mess up kindergarten, right? It's the bar is pretty low considering he's already reading and he's thriving at home. And frankly, I just wasn't ready to give him up. And so when he started, I figured this is going to be a great fit for him. I figured it would be a major sacrifice for me, though, because I was still having to work almost full-time hours at the hospital. And I had a toddler and a baby when we started. But as we fell into a rhythm, and it took a little while, but as we fell into a rhythm, I fell in love with the lifestyle, and I couldn't imagine anything else because our whole family was thriving. I was thriving. I was learning so much. And so it's just been a joy to continue. And I mean, I do feel like we hold it with open hands from year to year and see because I never want to say I would never put my kids in school. I had a great experience in public and private schools. For now, our family is really thriving. And so right now, this is the route for us.
Awesome. And so I'm going to guess, probably like anyone else that writes curriculum, you had a few ideas that you loved, and so you couldn't find exactly what you wanted. And so is that what you kind of did?
Yes, exactly. So morning time is where it started for us. And I was seeing so much fruit from what we were doing in morning time with our own family. So even scripture memory with our 3-year-old who was able to say Psalm 1, because we just did a little bit every morning. And I was studying Charlotte Mason at the time. And so trying to boil down her ideas into little bite-sized portions. So we would do a little bit of Bible, a little bit of scripture memory. We would sing a couple of hymns. We would do artist and composer study. And I was finding these living books and having so much fun putting it together. And so I thought, what if I put this into one format where other families can use it? And this was right after the pandemic had hit. And actually, we had just moved to Texas 6 weeks before March of 2020. And so I was thinking, I'll for sure go find a hospital to work in. And then the pandemic hit, and that was the last place I felt like I needed to be. And hospitals weren't even hiring. And so I was like, well, let me just see what happens with morning time. And a few families started buying it. And then it was like, God just grew it pretty quickly after that. So then we did an Advent resource, and then these holiday studies came after it. And as you probably feel like, there's just way more ideas that you have now than time for them. But it's just so passion driven that it's really life-giving to just keep going and keep finding things that work for your own family and then sharing them with others.
Yeah. So you've had some really rapid growth. And well, you kind of started out homeschooling, it sounds like, as a working mom a little bit. So that, of course, that was outside of the home. So how are you finding time and balancing the demands of keeping your home and being a wife and being a mom and homeschooling and now working at home as well?
Yeah. So I've either worked from home or outside the home for all of motherhood. And to be honest, I think working from home, I think there's pros and cons to all of it, but I think working from home is one of the most challenging because, especially with an online business that never sleeps, there are always needs. Whereas when I worked as a nurse at the hospital, I couldn't bring my patients home with me, obviously. And so I was able to just check that off and be done for the day. And so I've found it takes a lot of intention when it comes to boundaries of my time, a lot of discipline, and all of that to just protect what is most important, which is solid time with my family. Ultimately, they come before Brighter Day Press, and homeschooling them comes way before homeschooling all the other kids out there.
Yeah.
But also there are needs of the business, and this feels like a calling that I want to be obedient to. And so so like practically speaking, I get up really early. I get up around 5:30 in the morning. I go to bed. I try to go to bed early as well. But I pretty much, I have a general rhythm to our day set in place that I know is pretty predictable from day to day. I also have some help. So I also have help where I need it. And I have not always had help, but we have a babysitter that comes 3 afternoons a week from 1 to 4. And so that is my designated work time that I set up all of, conversations like this or any kind of meetings, anything that I know I need my full attention to be on the business is in those hours. But from the time my kids wake up, they're allowed to come downstairs at 7:30 in the morning. We've always had that boundary. They come down at 7:30 until after lunch. I am fully theirs. And so that is, and I haven't always been that way, but I found that is just the most life-giving thing to have these really pretty structured boundaries to protect my time. So
yeah, I think that's very important too, because I've definitely, especially when you are beginning something that, like you said, it's a hobby, and then it kind of gets out of control because you make it and you're like, okay, 2 other people are going to want this. And then that is not the case at all. And then it becomes not just like even a passion project that you find fulfilling, but then it genuinely feels like something God has tasked you to do, and that you would be disobeying him not to do it. And so then that kind of elevates like the intensity that you feel that you should place your energy on that. And then simultaneously, that you are a homeschool parent first, because
Right.
your children's education, like that is your first profession.
Yeah.
And so it is very easy when you're first starting out to not have any boundaries. And every single second of the morning between this kid's doing this and this kid's
Mhm.
doing this, picking up your phone, answering DMs,
Exactly.
jotting down an idea, answering an email, and those things quickly consume your mind, especially if you're like, I'm going to do this really quickly and it's kind of a mean DM or an
Mhm.
unhappy comment. And
Yes.
then like it hits you the wrong way, but you really don't have time to deal with it and process it properly or
Yes.
even respond like it needs to be. But then you still have to put on happy mom face and we're doing school
Exactly.
and not let that get you down. So it took me quite some time to
Mhm.
establish those really healthy boundaries where I realized like there are no quick emails or quick DMs because the bad ones can catch you off guard, usually out of nowhere on the day that you need them the least. And
Yes.
they deserve like a thoughtful and gracious response.
Right.
And that's never my first my first response,
Information.
especially when I expected it to be really quick, you know?
Right. Right.
And so as you were talking about boundaries, which is just so important. So like probably tip number one from both of us to any
Yes.
mom that is listening to this, that's homeschooling and wanting to work at home, is the boundaries need to be the Berlin Wall. Like
Yes.
put
Yes.
the phone away when
Mhm.
you are in mom time,
Yes.
school time mode.
Yes.
Don't touch it.
Mhm.
And if you are working with a team, let them know, you know.
Right.
I don't have a specific time of day because like I have someone that handles my emails for me
Mhm.
and she needs to be able to ask me questions while she's working. And she and I almost always work the opposite times.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I don't say, hey, you can't message me, but I do have it on silent. And
Right.
that way I can get to it when it is my time to get to it,
Yeah.
not in the middle of,
Yes.
taking care of my kids.
Yes.
So that my patience is not stretched so thin that it
Right.
like kind of snaps and stuff.
Right.
So I think that the boundaries are good. And then you also talked about help. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's probably tip number two is that makes it sustainable because you started out without any help. I
Yes.
started out without any help. How long do you think you handled everything yourself before you got help?
Um, about 8 or 10 months. But at the same, like our business did grow pretty quickly, and so by the time, with a release, we were getting 2 to 300 orders or something like that, and needing to package them all up. And I'm packaging every single one, putting them in poly bags, putting them in mailers. And actually,
Yeah.
my husband does the majority of the shipping. We've tried some different things with that. But the thing that I was drowning in was the emails and the DMs.
Yes.
There were days that there would be over 200 of them, of DMs, and
Hmm.
they're so valuable. And this is a ministry, and this is such a part of this. It's more than a business, it's a ministry. And yet I don't have hours a day to thoughtfully answer those. And so a friend of mine came up to me at a Bible study, and I was just about, well, actually, I had just asked them to pray because I was going to ask the Instagram world for someone to help me with DMs. And she came up to me and she was like, I think I'm your girl. And I was like, okay, if you want to tackle this. And I just felt like I was drowning in it. And so she took over just the most frequently asked questions. She would save the
Hmm.
ones that I would need to answer, but that took a huge weight off. And she's also
Yeah.
a homeschool mom, and so knew how to answer some of the things. But yeah, and then we've added a few people over time. So I get some help with graphic design. We have somebody putting all the books in poly bags and kind of
Hmm.
doing packaging. Some of the book lists that I post online that are in a calendar form or have an Amazon list and are on the website, I will come up with the whole book list, and then someone will do that graphic. So things like that I absolutely need help, and in fact need more help. I'm about to hire someone else. So it's just, I think, yeah, that's a great tip to just, if you are able, get help when you need it, because
Yeah.
it's not sustainable to be growing and be one person.
Yes, very true. And I think that's going to vary for everyone.
Yes.
I started my blog in 2017, but didn't do the general classical preschool until 2018.
Okay.
And I was probably able to handle it completely by myself for about a year, year and a half. And then I had the idea for On Mission, and I needed some graphic design help. I was doing the graphic design myself, but I was very self-taught.
Yes.
And I knew that it could be better. And so I had someone come alongside me and help. She would kind of like come behind me and fix my graphic design. And it really helped to teach me so much. And then it's because she was a graphic designer. And then it was like, then the next thing was I needed help with the emails. And it's the repetitious things. You have a frequently asked questions, but a lot of times it gets overlooked or people can't find that answer. And so they're going to shoot you an email and ask you the question, and you're happy. You want them to have the answer. You're happy to answer it, but you can only answer it like so many times and amongst so many. And so you want to be able to give your attention to those emails or those DMs that like, they really touch your heart. And you want to be able to respond to those with thoughtfulness and not like, I have 500 DMs I have to answer, so I can't give anyone my time.
Exactly.
So that's so that would be kind of tip number 2 is as soon as it makes sense, outsource and outsource the most repetitious thing first, or the thing that steals your joy the most. So if someone was creating a curriculum product and they really hated graphic design, but they loved to come up with the ideas and the organization, and they could maybe make it into a Word document, hire a graphic designer. That might be your first thing. Or, something along those lines. So I think that's a fantastic tip number 2. Do you have a tip number 3?
Number 3. Okay, let me think. I think when we're talking about the things that drain you, I schedule things every day in my business time of work that bring me joy, because otherwise I could spend that whole 3 hours answering mean DMs. I don't have that many mean DMs, but you know what I mean? Like the things that drain you. You could spend your entire work time on things that drain you and never make progress on the things that you really enjoy. And so, like, for example, today, for 1 hour, I was working on a future watercolor tutorial and just put on some music and painted. And that is so life-giving to me. And it is work, but it's like, it reminds me why I'm doing this in the first place, because it's so enjoyable. And I can't wait to see the families that are going to be painting these things, but I'm not spending all of work time on the things that are super draining. So
I think that's really good too. I just now transitioned to an office away from my home, which would probably be like one of my top tips, because so initially it just seemed like an absolutely unnecessary expense, right? Like to have the gas, the rent, all that kind of stuff. And initially my husband, we built a shop at the back of our property that's like part barn, but also our inventory area, and that's where we do all of our shipping and stuff. And my desk was in there, and I would go down there to work. But then we needed the space for the inventory, so I had to pull my desk out. We had to put more shelving and stuff in, and we're still like, we're in dire need. My printer, I have a local printer that is able to keep a lot of my stuff and just bring me like smaller sections at a time. But so I moved back into our bedroom, and I have I was like, I couldn't figure out how many children I have. I have 4 children, but then my husband is there. So that's 5 people that either via cell phone or in person are all going to contact me or need something from me, or just want to share something with me. Maybe they want to bring me a flower, which is a beautiful thing. But if they all do it 3 times, then that is 15 interruptions in a 3 or a 4 hour period. And most of the time it's not 3 times. Most of the time it is more than 3 times each. And the struggle I was having is I want to be there to be available to my family. I don't want to not be there. And so that kept me there probably longer than it should have, because I loved the availability. But when it came down to it, whenever I would get done with work, I would be so burned out and I would be
Mhm.
frustrated with
Yes.
one or more of my family members because they did not honor the fact that like I need to work.
Yeah.
I'm not just in there working because I do love to work. And I'm fortunate that I love my
Yes.
work, but I
Uh-huh.
do need to
Right.
work.
Yes.
And so, other families are relying on me, but also food, clothing, and shelter for ourselves, right?
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so mommy needs to work, but I don't want to be mean to you when you come in here and
Right.
interrupt me for the 14th time because you're bringing me a sweet flower or showing me something that you drew and something that's wonderful. And so
Yes.
so I did a very short-term lease and I've just gone ahead and signed it like for the next 7 months because I was so happy with the experience.
Yeah.
But I found an office space. That way I leave. Mommy is leaving and going to work. And then I'm gone for like 4, maybe 6 hours. It depends on how much stuff I have to do, but it's
Yeah.
usually 3 to 4 days a week.
Mhm.
And then when I come home, I feel so satisfied at the
Yes.
amount of work I was able to get accomplished. And I can do something that I love. Like right before we started talking, I was reading Sally Clarkson's Giving Your Words. Like I'm just
Okay.
starting that one. That's so
Yes.
good. Doing my Bible study, which I didn't
Mhm.
get to this morning.
Yes.
And just kind of like even stretching. I'm super sore from the gym yesterday. So like had some quiet time by myself
Yes.
to do a few things that are life-giving to me
Yes.
before I stepped into like the next section of work.
Yes.
And while I thought I would be missing out to not be there with my kids,
Yeah.
I have realized like I am better in my presence with them and I'm not walking back into the room with them when I'm done with work, frustrated with
Right.
them, or even as energetically burned out from having to like refocus on
Yeah.
my work
Exactly.
so many
I think
times. Yeah.
I think that's the most draining thing possible is having to bounce from one to another over and over. So whatever it takes to guard that time and space. For me, our office, all of our stuff is in our home, but when I have a babysitter, typically I go out to a local coffee shop that when they see me pull in, they know what my order is. I'm there way too often, but it's quiet and it's private. It's great. And so I'm able to just zone in. And then, like you said, when you come home, you're refreshed and you're ready to jump back in and you don't have a phone attached to your hand, which going back to the phone thing, specifically for people with homeschooling and working from home, one thing that I've learned to do is definitely not even have it in reach, but I turn it on, like the way that my settings are, I turn it on silent unless a call comes through. So my family knows if they need me, they can call and I'll hear it anywhere in the house. It's down on the kitchen counter. But if I get texts, I'm not going to be hearing it over and over. And that has been such a freeing boundary because I'm like, no one needs me unless they're calling, then they need me. But I can count on one hand the times I've ever even gotten a call from somebody that needs me during that time. And so I think, man, that's a gift to your kids, but it's also a gift to you to just be focused on one thing at a time.
Yeah, I do not think the Lord created us to be all things to all people.
No.
We cannot be. He can, and that is it. And it can be a little bit like when we don't place those boundaries on ourselves, it can almost be from a place of pride and idolatry that like we think that we can do all these things at one time. And so if you are going to endeavor to start a business or work from home for someone else while you're homeschooling, because it is a very challenging thing. Like if you're on the fence, you're not sure if you should do it or not, like definitely pray about it and make sure it's something that God is calling you to do, that you're not doing it out of your own ambitions. Maybe you're doing it out of your own need or it's something that God's calling you to do. But know that it's a very challenging thing and that when you do try to be all things to all people at all times, then it is pride, and I say that knowing that I've walked through it and probably will walk through it because I'll lapse back into it and then recognize I can't be accessible to the world all of the time. I can't even be accessible to my family all of the time because I can't do everything at one time. Like I'm a very scatterbrained individual that needs quiet and focus in order to do what God's called me to do. And so everything has to be chunked Like this is, that animal time first
Yes.
thing in the morning. And that's kind of some time with my husband, just
Yes.
the two of us. And then there's school time. So my husband goes off and does whatever his other things are. He ships all of our stuff
Okay.
as well. So he does that in the mornings,
Yes.
from, an hour or 2 hours, however long it takes him.
Yeah.
And then about a lunchtime, we're all eating.
Mhm.
And then I come to work and he has the boys. And so either they do some more work around the house or they like fight each other or whatever they do. I don't even know what they're doing because I'm not there to know about it anymore.
That's right.
So you said that your husband helps you ship. So
He
is he
does.
involved? How much is he involved in your business?
So more and more all the time. He has a full-time job at a church. He's a worship pastor. And so his days off are Friday and Saturday. And so just nuts and bolts. I mean, he is up early shipping after breakfast and before he goes to work, and he brings the packages with him on his way to work, which is super helpful. So he handles all of the shipping, all of the inventory, all of like ordering supplies and packing supplies and all that. And then I also get his help a lot with writing some of the resources or just reading over them and editing them before, theologically mainly. And so, yes, he is very involved. He actually just built our first booth for a conference that we just did in Round Rock. And
I loved your booth. I love that shiplap thing. I was like, I don't think I can get that into a trailer to get it up to Pigeon Forge or anything like that. I was like, I'm just gonna have to go with a curtain to stare, but I loved it because it just added so much warmth to your booth. It was beautiful.
Thank you. It looked, we wanted it to feel like an extension of our home, and it did. I was like, I would move in here. But I guess that's another tip for those thinking about a business like this and taking this on, because I would not be able to do it without his support. And without him, like even last night, I have a list of things that I'm needing to get accomplished in the next couple months. And I was feeling like I was drowning. And I think he could tell that I was stressed about all of the things that I had on my plate. And so we went through and he said, okay, how many hours do you have left on this? Okay, 6 hours. Where are these 6 hours going to fit in the next 2 weeks? And so he literally mapped everything out on Google Calendar and said, from 1 to 2 on this day, you're painting. From 3 to 4, you're working on a speech. All of these things that I absolutely needed to get done. But he is such a sounding board and just a constant support. And I think if I was, and the other practical thing that he does is on Friday, on his day off, is his time with the kids. And so he takes them and plays at the park or whatever. And I get the first, from the time I wake up until after lunch, and maybe even into the afternoon, to get a solid chunk of work done. And the kids love that. They are so happy about it. It's awesome for all of them. And then Saturday is our protected Sabbath family day. And but all that to say, I don't know. Brighter Day Press would not exist without a supportive husband. So
and I think that's extremely important. Not to say that there aren't single moms that can't make it work 100%, but if you are married, your husband needs to be on board, because not just for, as your business grows, all these applicable ways. My husband came home. He worked full time up until January of this year. No, not this year, last year. So it's been over a year. This is going by, but last year he left his career and is our whole family is invested in the General Classical Press.
Amazing. Yes.
And so, it was a dream come true. After a couple of years of blogging, I was like, one day I'm going to bring you home and you can work with me. And he was like, how would I work with me? Because we know ourselves well enough to know we don't work together. We work we work in unison.
Yes.
Well, but we need to each have kind of our own tasks that are a little bit differently. So if people were like, I could never work with my husband, I can't either. You should have seen us yesterday putting a barn up for our new cow. Okay, we do not, because we're total opposites. I'm like, just stick it. Why does it have to be measured? It's just up there. And he's like, it has to be perfect. I'm like, for the cow? That's our personalities.
Yes.
But he has his roles. He handles the shipping. He orders the supplies for that kind of stuff. But he also, from the very get-go, has encouraged me and supported me in this thing.
Yes.
And he didn't even know what Charlotte Mason was
Right.
or any of these things. Like, he didn't have to know it. He just had to know that I was passionate about it and it was important to me. And he could see that other families loved it and needed it as well.
Yes.
And so then he just was all in supporting me. And so he's also like, you know, the 50% owner of the business. So he helps me with all the financial decisions that
Okay.
happen
Yeah.
as you grow, because
Sure.
it can be really challenging. Like, it's challenging in a very blessed way, but it is challenging and overwhelming to have a business grow. Like, I have a banking and finance degree, but I never used it. Like, I went into graphic design and all these things after college. And
Mhm.
so to me, to make these future financial decisions, future planning decisions based on general information from the past with
Right.
no concrete information about the future. Like, how
Yeah.
many things do I order? Do I get a small business loan? Do I not? Do I hire this person? Do I not? And so there's these big decisions. So he's there helping me make decisions, building my confidence in what I'm doing, because I would have quit this a long time ago without him. And then
Yes.
also, you know, helping me trust in the Lord. Like,
Yeah.
babe, like, nobody's going to just stop coming to your website all
Yeah.
of a sudden and not getting your
Exactly.
stuff anymore. Like, unless there's a huge global disaster, like, it's
Right.
okay, you know?
Right.
And so I could never have done it without him and my best friend, as a matter of fact.
Mm.
You have to have, whether it's your spouse or not, like, you have to have a rallying
Yes.
group around you to build you up, because you're
Yeah.
going to have a lot of low moments and a lot of moments
Absolutely.
where it does not feel like it's worth it.
Yes. And people do not see that. They see the pretty pictures on Instagram. They see like, oh, all these people are using your resources. They don't see the ugly DMs. They don't see, and none of us can see coming the spiritual attacks that come.
Yeah.
Because almost every time I'm about to release something that that I know is going to encourage families to go to their Bibles, maybe for the first time, to work, you know, anything like that. There's so much spiritual attack and so much doubt that floods my mind of not only will they not buy it, but they'll hate it. Like
Yes.
they'll want to like trash me online. Like, it's just so extreme and it's so predictable, but it's so helpful to have a support person to say,
Yeah.
that is a lie. Like, this is something God's called you to, and look how he is working. I mean, that's, yeah, indispensable to have that.
Yeah, because absolutely, it's like clockwork. Whenever it's not only is the spiritual warfare like clockwork, but just my own doubts and
Yes.
fears and anxieties are like clockwork. So once you've had that team around you from the beginning, they can say, okay, every time there's a release, like, first of all, I'm going to cover us in
Yes.
prayer that much more, because I know it's coming, but
Yes.
also you think this every time, and it's
Right.
okay every time. You know, like, you have to
Exactly.
trust God.
Yes.
And so, and I just could never do it without those people in my life,
Totally.
for sure. For sure.
Totally.
Was there anything that you wanted to add?
Man, I guess just going back to praying about the pace that your business grows. That's something that I've needed to do in this past year, and praying about what to say no to, because and without the fear of this opportunity will never come again, because you never know, like, it may come again, but you have to be wise about what you say yes to and what you say no to. We're all given the same amount of hours in a day. And so I think just being prayerful about, those boundaries you set, and ultimately what you say no to, even though I'm terrible at saying no. I'm such a people pleaser that it's like, oh, can you lead this nature group? And I'm like, that would not be a good fit for me in this season. But I'm like, yeah, I'll try. Like, I'll, and whereas, I mean, and if you feel led to, you can say yes to that kind of thing, but to protect those priorities, it goes back to boundaries, but being really prayerful about that, because God's going to show you, and God's going to bring unity between you and your spouse about, the opportunities you say yes to and those that you say not right now.
Yeah, that reminds me of Lisa Turkhurst's book, The Best Yes.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of good things that you have to say no to in order to be available for the yes thing. And I've studied and prayed and thought a lot about, I have good ideas a lot, and then I have God ideas.
Yes.
And even amongst our products, I can point to a product and I can say, this was a God idea and this was a good idea. So this is serving people and it's a good thing. And I like it. Like, it's fun to make. But it does not have a supernatural power behind it compelling it forward.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of like I do it in my own power, just a little bit,
Totally.
and God uses it, but it's not quite like crazy how popular it is or how impactful it has been to other people. And so just kind of like having that self-control to say, and the courage to say no, even to yourself when you have a good idea and it's not a God idea, but also the courage to like be obedient if you feel like this is something that God's calling you to. And whether it's curriculum, authorship, or really anything else, like, make sure that it's a God idea, because I do see a lot of people that kind of like step into the space and they'll have some good ideas, but it never like takes off, and then they don't stick with it very long, and then it kind of goes away. And so everybody's like, what's the difference between this thing and this thing? And it'll be a good thing, and it just never really goes anywhere. And I honestly think it's just a matter of like, God gave them specific talents and abilities, but this is not specifically what he's calling them to do with that talent and time. Even though it's very good. And so I have definitely found like being prayerful, like even, I do quarterly retreats just to keep my head on straight. I mean, we need time every day, but I find that just getting away and just spending time with the Lord and asking him very specific product, marketing, like all those different things. And trusting, like, if he gives me a God idea that is absolutely insane, he will also bring along the people who will help it come to life. Like, if he's calling me to do something, it doesn't mean that I have to do it by myself, even though like when he calls me to it, I'm like, I'm alone right now. Like, just obeying and taking those first steps, and he's going to start bringing team members and stuff into. And it makes it really beautiful. Like, when I first started out, I did everything myself, and it was pretty good. Like, I mean, I look back and I'm like, this is not bad, especially like my first thing I ever did. But now I can look at the stuff we make now, and I can see the different influences of the different writers and the graphic designers and everybody operating in their strengths, and how beautiful that is, and how amazing it makes the products, and how much more fruitful they are for people's homes. And it gives me chills. I just love it so much.
Well, and looking from the outside in, I'm sure On Mission was a God idea, because it's impacting so many. And I see exactly what you're talking about, where so many people are coming together, and you have people, missionaries, and people that have experience in those countries, sharing their insight. It is so powerful. So I love it. Yes.
Well, I have 3 questions that I've been asking everybody that are kind of fun, but maybe like a little hard. So, this first one is the one that makes everybody feel physically pained for me to ask it. If you could only read one book for the rest of your life, and it is not the Bible, what would it be?
Okay. Oh, that is painful. Man. So I actually just read a book, and now I'm going to blank on the title, but it was Habits of...
Is it Highly Effective People?
No, it's Justin Whitmell Early is his name. Habits of the Household. That's what it is.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
And honestly, so much was affirming of what we're already doing in our family, parenting wise, but so much... I would read it and I would memorize portions of it, because there are beautiful prayers that are just, even like when your child can't sleep, or when you can't sleep, or, just these little liturgies that can go throughout your day and bring so much intention. And so I don't know, that's giving a lot of credit to this one book, but I loved it. It was awesome.
Good. Awesome. I've read probably half of it. I'm the best book starter and the worst book finisher
I'm
in
with
the
you.
world.
Yes.
I blame it on ADHD. Like I kind of get like a good amount of whatever I needed from the first half, and then I
Yes.
tend to go off to something else.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you could tell your brand new mom self anything, like go back in time, talk to Whitney when she's got her two youngest children, maybe a newborn, like what would you tell yourself?
I would probably say accept the help that is offered to you, because there would be older women in our church that would say, hey, if you just need me to come and hold a baby. And I almost never took them up on that because
Yeah.
I was, prideful and my house was messy and I was overwhelmed and I wanted to do it on my own. But I would say, like, let them fold a load of laundry, let them come over so you can take a nap. Like, just allow God's community to come around you and help you through those really, really challenging seasons, because they are.
You're the second person that answered that way.
Really?
And it always sparks the thoughts about our culture, like
Yes.
the American culture, and how accepting help is not something, it's almost viewed as like bad manners, but like
Yes.
nobody offers help if
Yeah.
they don't mean it.
Mean
And
it.
it can be so valuable to the person who is offering help. Like when
Absolutely.
you're turning down the help, you're turning down a blessing for you and for them.
Yes.
And
That's
so, especially like with the older women in our, in our communities and in our churches that maybe they have grandchildren, but they're not close, or maybe they don't get to see them as much as they would like to. It is
yes.
literally good for their physical and their mental health for them just to come and
Absolutely.
interact with your children. And
Yes.
so, like, don't be stingy with your kids. Like, share them
Exactly.
with your community because they're a blessing for everyone, not just for you.
Totally.
Okay, this one's lighthearted. Favorite beverage?
So I drink a matcha latte every morning with raw milk if I have it. And that has just been in the last year, but I love it. Some people think it tastes like grass. It kind of does, but
I feel that way. Yeah, it's
I
grassy to
love
me. Yeah.
it. But it's just, I don't know, it feels
It's very
healthy,
fresh.
very fresh. It's just a good way to start the morning. So after I wake up and I try to work out and have Bible study before the kids come downstairs. Otherwise, it's likely that it won't happen. But once I get ready for the day and we're about to sit down and homeschool, I make a matcha latte. It's just delicious.
Yay, I love that. Okay. Well, I will have to try it again. It has been
Yes.
quite some time. And I think I've only had one from Starbucks. And I have found, like, even though people drink Starbucks like crazy, it's like nothing that I get there is necessarily like the
No.
best tasting coffee or anything to me. So maybe I'll give like the homemade version
I
a
can
try.
give you my recipe. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, tell everyone where they can find you on social media and your shop and all those things.
Sure. So on Instagram, I'm Brighter Day Press, and online, brighterdaypress.com. So pretty easy.
Easy enough. Easy
Yes.
enough. Well, thank you, Whitney, for spending this time with me
Yes.
and sharing your top tips. I turned it into a tip thing.
Yeah.
And encouragement for anyone who is homeschooling and they're trying to figure out how they can do a little bit more to contribute to their family's income, or just maybe obey what God's calling them to do, and how it's not easy, but they can make it work following some, kind of basic principles. And I hope that was encouraging. So thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you for having me. It was encouraging to me. So thank you.